I'm so pleased to have this chance to meet and speak with Rod Stryker. Rod, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Great. I'm really good and happy to be with you, Todd.
Thank you so much. This is a great opportunity. I've been hearing about you for years. I started practicing Hatha yoga in around about 2000, and Yoga Journal magazine was really popular. And I saw you in Yoga Journal back then, and that was the first time I'd heard about you. So I'm just delighted to have this chance to ask you questions about your yoga journey and what you're up to these days.
Okay, I hope it can make it interesting. It's been an interesting journey, and I hope the conversation about it is interesting and partially informative. So, fire away, Todd. Where would you like to start?
I'm really curious what your first yoga experience was.
Well, that's an interesting question. I was 5 years old, and I was at my uncle's house in actually granduncle in Philadelphia. It's not where I grew up. It's the summer I learned to ride a bike, in fact, at his house. And I remember pulling a book off the shelf and seeing this guy doing yoga postures. And it left an impression at 5 years old that this guy was doing things with his body that just really spoke to me. And it seemed, I think looking back, my sense was that I was seeing that someone had not just control of his body, but there was something going on at a deeper level. And that it left a powerful impression. So that was the first one. And then I didn't actually start doing yoga till I was 19.
Amazing. You were 19.
Mhm.
What was the setting that you found
Well,
did you find a yoga class? Did you start looking at a book and trying to emulate or
no,
imitate?
I don't feel like I was original in any sense of it. Most of us come to yoga because we think it offers us a better life or something better from life, or perhaps we've reached a point in our life, whether it's like a lower back problem or we feeling stressed. So it's hard to imagine that 19 I was feeling stressed, but I was, and I I had left college in my junior year, and I wasn't quite 20 yet, and I started working. And I remember being at work at a kind of employee meeting one day, and one of the waitresses turned to me and said, you should try yoga. And I was a little too busy to do it, so I wound up. She said, "Well, if you can't come to my class, then just go get light on yoga." And that was the beginning. And I don't know how many of your listeners or you yourself have read Light on Yoga, but the introduction to that is like about 50 pages, and like the best 50 pages, giving the most clear synthesis of what yoga is, and in a way, what it isn't. And
Yes.
that just set me on fire. To be honest with you, I felt like I was not learning something, I was remembering something as I
Mm,
was reading it,
yeah.
even though it was my first introduction, my introduction. So that lit the fire, and in a matter of days, I started doing yoga in my apartment there in Denver, and I was forever changed, to be honest with you.
Well, that's cool. Do you feel like Iyengar's book? I have read his book. It is incredible. Did you just start following step by step the way he sequenced those postures? Is that how you basically got started?
Exactly. I kind of followed it, and then, but if you know that book, it's like a 7-year course
Yeah.
in which he just totally lays it out, what postures you're going to do for months 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 12, on and on until 7 years. And so I think after about, and the other thing he does, which is kind of really compelling for those, especially those who've kind of developed or grown up in vinyasa, his thing is, okay, for instance, the third pose, I think, was Parshva so side angle pose. And he says, hold it for 30 seconds to 2 minutes.
Mm.
So if out of the gate, I was always a little bit of a zealot. So I was like, out of the gate, okay, well, if I can do this for 30, why not do it for 120 seconds?
Yeah.
And like you start shaking, and it was the summer, and it was Denver. My apartment was hot, and like I was standing. There were no yoga mats in those days, by the way. This was, 1980, and I was just stunned by how powerful it was, even though I wasn't moving.
Yeah. That's
You
so
know,
cool.
you're just experiencing your body's resistance and gravity. And so I quickly got some magic from it, holding it 2 minutes. And then within a few months of kind of really taking the graduated version of the way he was describing it, I kind of wanted to see what was going on in the back of the book a little bit. Like, what are you doing in year 5? And what are you doing in year 6 and 7?
Yeah.
And some of those poses were beyond my reach, even at that age. And you need a lot of time to get to some leg behind head stuff and that kind of, more advanced poses. But the same person recommended I do my yoga out of the book, said, well, look, if you're only going to do, you know, if you're really going to concentrate on poses, you just concentrate on a headstand and shoulder stand.
Mm.
Again, you go to the book and he says, okay, do headstand for, I don't remember the minimum, but I think he's saying like 1 to 2 minute minimum to as long as 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So within a couple weeks, I started doing shoulder stand for half an hour.
Whoa. That's
And
serious. That,
I
that
was baked.
that's hard. I've tried that. It hurts. Like all the blood coming from your toes down. And I mean, you start getting that burning kind of fiery into the digit sensation. I mean, that's a full on challenge right there.
Well, and what you're speaking to is really your nervous system. I mean, that's the thing that a lot of the times we think about the more advanced poses as being like really flexible requiring a great amount of flexibility. But there's another kind of way we look at the more advanced postures. And what they ask you to do is stay there for longer and longer periods of time while keeping your breath even. Like
Mm,
you're, as much as anything, mastering your breath. And the pose is giving you leverage to master your breath in more and more stressful situations.
true.
So it's not necessarily only about like leg behind head, which is one way to think of more advanced poses. It's more about how stable and how long can I remain there and not be disturbed or provoked. And then it becomes like a mirror for life. And that's what was starting to happen for me. I was beginning to sense like, wow, if I can find this rhythm of steadiness in these poses, stay there. And by the way, the follow up to shoulder stand, he also says plow pose should be done for half the time you're in shoulder stand. So
Mm-hmm.
my practice became a few poses, shoulder stand for 30 minutes, plow pose for 15. And those two poses for 45 minutes, I mean, after that, my nervous system was had reached such a deep level of healing that I would go into Shavasana and literally float, like floated. I
Yeah.
don't know where but I went into the infinite. We'll call it that.
And
And
all of
that
this,
was,
that's amazing. And all of this at this point is through the instruction of a book, not from any human to human transmission of information. Is that correct?
100% right.
Which is pretty amazing because we hear all the time you have to have a teacher, and that's how information is transmitted. And clearly, Iyengar was transmitting his teaching through the book, but often we might think it might not be as valuable as the human to human experience. I know you have an online platform and you've been able to communicate your teaching through that platform. What is your take and thoughts on this whole person to person transmission and the pros and cons of the digital and or analog version
Wow.
of transmission?
Wow. We could spend the whole hour on that.
I know I
Uh,
maybe we
yeah.
can do another part two somewhere down the road because I
Yeah.
know we only have an
Cool.
hour and I
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I have so many questions for you, but I was just
All
curious.
right. Let's go there.
All right.
Well, at first there is this saying, and it's not as well known, but one of the sayings also, you're absolutely right, is we hear again and again about the value of the connection between a teacher and a student. And so let's hold on to that. And definitely I want to speak to that because I had really significant influence and positive effect from having a teacher who actually watched me grow and could shape my practice and contribute and guide me in practice as I was changing, my life was changing, et cetera. But one of the sayings is the practice is the teacher, not to replace the student, not to replace having an actual physical teacher, but there is this experience that we have where something inside of us is lit through practice. Now, is it the most efficient way to light this kind of inner teacher, inner guide, inner wisdom, whatever we want to call it? There's a term in the tradition. It's adesha. Adesha means the first guide, the primary guide, if you will, and that's internal. That, I think, most of the deeper teachings tell us that inside of us, our own essence is the real teacher. And at the same time, having someone outside of us who's further down the path in their own evolution, their own understanding of the practice is really instrumental. It's incredibly valuable. And not only can they see us, but they can also understand the landscape that we may be on the verge of moving through. And by the way, there's also this idea that they can transmit part of their own wisdom, their own lived in experience of the practice through voice or through touch, you know. And of course, I mean that in the right vein, with integrity, et cetera. And so it's kind of invaluable. You know, both are really necessary. To think you can have a teacher and not practice and embody the yoga would be a misunderstanding. To think that you always need someone overseeing you is also wrong, because the teacher lives in the practice. And there is value, though, in having a teacher who can tell us, how do you avoid making the same mistake in your yoga? Or are you doing yoga in such a way that you're continuing to grow? And in that sense, having someone outside of us is really invaluable. And
Amazing.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, all right, Todd, go ahead.
No, great point. I'm following you. I guess
Yeah.
then the follow through is in your working with students and the use of in person versus being able to offer through either online or audio or book learning. Are you just feeling like it's all good? It's all
Well,
working.
oh man, I think most teachers are going to agree. I think I'm on the same page with most teachers. Look, the reality is there was no such thing really. I mean, there were videos. I mean, way back when I made yoga videos with Kathy Smith in the early days, and Rodney Yee and Patricia Walden were some of the first yoga videos out on the market. And I actually met students back in the Yoga Journal days where we'd come together as, you know, this very diffused community and suddenly all converge in a single place, and 1,000, 2,000, 2,500, or 3,000 yogis all like wanting to learn. And I was meeting people who had done my video and had never studied with a live teacher.
Mm,
And they were having experiences. So you can definitely, and now just, you know, pandemic and the advent of Zoom, it's like 5 years old that, and I see you doing this work, Todd, where you're sharing the teachings, the actual practices online. And
yes.
there's a place for it.
Yeah.
There's no question. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well answered. I hear you. Yeah.
I, so as a teacher, you probably have this experience where it's different having people in the room.
Yeah.
You can transmit an experience online, just like we can share knowledge with people who are going to listen to this conversation. And it can definitely stir interest and passion and curiosity and more, let's say, understanding. We could even then lead a meditation or lead a few movements before we were done and generate an experience. But wow, being in the same room with people, and I think that's the advantage now that we have coming back to the rooms, is there's just a depth of experience that you don't get on your own, isolated in a space, you know,
Yeah.
in your own space, siloed up, you know.
Good point. I
Yeah.
noticed that, well, actually, I can't remember who it is. This is a long time ago. So I can't tell you who it is. I think she was one of your students, and she was excited to go with you to India to I think the way she explained it, and at this point, I was really unclear about what Tantra is, and I'm still learning every day about like I'm trying to constantly learn more about it because I'm like, what really is this? And so she had said, I'm going with Rod to India to bring back the Shakti to the temples, to some of the
Mm,
old Tantra temples in India. And that blew
mm,
my mind just thinking about that
mhm.
because I was thinking, how would we reinfuse energy into a sacred or a structure that's been created for
Mm,
spiritual practice?
mm.
Am I getting this right? Am I hitting the mark at all? Did you ever do anything like that?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's quite, yeah, yeah. Thanks, Stephen, for reminding me about it because it was a significant point and a point in time. There was, I think she's probably talking about 2013, maybe
Sounds about the
specifically.
right time frame, yeah. So
Uh,
I guess to
oh,
back up on my question, could you
yeah,
give us some Tantra for Dummies answer to what
awesome.
is Tantra first? And then I'd love to hear about what your mission was on that particular journey.
Okay, so here goes Tantra for Dummies. But first, let me just say this, Todd. It's Tantra is so vast that what they say about it is to understand all of it would take 33 lifetimes. So I'm still learning too. But this has really been the heart of what I learned. When I met a teacher in 1980, this is what I learned. I learned Tantra yoga. And so what is Tantra? Tantra is the word is, it's got at least 4 or 5 meanings that are relevant, but the short version of it, it means body of knowledge. And it also is a worldview that says that beneath all of the comings and goings, the good and bad, and the right and wrong, and the left and right, and the blue and the red, and all of the stuff, the life and death, the gain and loss, behind it all, the world is actually sacred. That there is a sacred, maybe invisible beauty to reality. So there's a worldview that Tantra says that everything is sacred. We may not see it that way, but everything is inherently sacred. So below the surface, again, there is the sacred reality. And then it becomes another meaning of the word is technique. It becomes about the technology that unfolds the experience of the sacred. So the tantrics were kind of this radical departure, and they still remain on the fringe of most spiritual traditions. The closest other one I can describe is Taoism. So in Taoism, for instance, it's we have Tai Chi, we have acupuncture, we have Feng Shui. We have all of these different ways that we bring more enjoyment and richness and fulfillment to our life. The tantrics were like of the mind that everyone should be able to practice, men and women, not just priests. So it was a practice for householders. And how do we bring the sacred out of the temples and into our lives?
Mm,
And another aspect of tantra says that every energy in the body is in the universe, and every energy in the universe is in our body, and the body becomes the map by which we begin to interrelate with the energy that pervades the world around us. The body is the map. And so these were the guys who developed asana, so that whether modern practitioners have ever meditated, ever heard of the word tantra, they are practicing tantric yoga in the sense that asana was developed by the tantrics to awaken the sacred within them. And so that this vision of possibility, and we even go one step further and say there are three things they were after. They're after, number one, moksha, which is liberation or freedom in the world. Didn't mean to drop your body, but to live with freedom and ease. The second one is enjoyment. We could enjoy our lives, that as long as we weren't harming anyone, that life was meant to be lived fully. And your senses are part of your body and part of your life. So you're meant to find enjoyment in life. And the third thing, it's called riddhi, it's to accomplish, to achieve things. So Tantra is this extraordinary body of knowledge that allows us to uncover the sacred within us so that we can see the sacred outside of us. and that we can more and more become, there can be a continuity. Another meaning of the word Tantra is continuity. There can be a continuous kind of sense of stepping into the temple, stepping out of the temple, and not losing our sense of connection to what really is essential.
Mm. Ooh, that was good.
All right.
Well
Yoga,
done. Well
Tantra.
done.
All right.
Yeah, that was good. I,
So,
yes.
the short version of this trip to India that she described to you, we don't think about it a lot, but, often, I don't want to say it's strictly an Indian tendency, it's often we go to sacred places hoping to be touched and hoping to take something with us. But we don't often think about going to sacred places and giving them the merits of our own practice or love, you know? And so the sense of this is that temples actually over hundreds of years, not thousands, as multitudes and multitudes of people go to them, they actually take from the temple, they take from these sacred sites, as opposed to actually give and build them. And so there's this concept of prana pratishta. In essence, you're giving the gift of prana back to temples to bring them back to life so that they're full of meaning and possibility and continue to thrive.
Wow.
Wow.
I remember the moment I heard about this so distinctly that I couldn't wait to ask you about this in person because I thought, oh my gosh, I actually get a chance to talk to him about this because it just caught me off guard. I was kind of like, to do what? Wow, that's
Yeah.
an interesting idea. Like, you're right. I like that this concept of instead of just I'm going to hopefully take or receive. So then on that note, what if you right now had a temple in your backyard slash took a trip to India to an old tantra or tantric temple, what type of meditation or thoughts or practice or what would you do to give? Just simply be
Hmm.
present in the space, or was there some sort of ritual or some idea that you tried to put into place to have this vision come to light?
So there's a system to do it, but we can describe it, and there's kind of as much a systematic approach to it, a methodology, but there's a spirit to what I'm about to describe. Answer to your question, and that is that um, what you're giving to it is the gift of your own practice, and really the gift of practice in the ultimate sense is it's more than just the relief from stress and our day-to-day struggles and trying to navigate world, family, responsibilities, all that stuff. But the gifts of practice really become this kind of treasure chest where we're collecting our experience that is the delight, the power, the wisdom that comes from touching your own essence. So imagine now, every time that's happened, whether it's been in Shavasana at the end of the practice, or in a meditation practice, or perhaps it's highlighted the next time after practice. It didn't happen in class, but you look at a sunset and you're reminded, like, oh, that what's ever going on now, the magic that's happening now, actually, I actually was touching on that in my practice, even though I didn't know it at the time. And so this becomes like a treasure chest, a collection of them, and then of these experiences. And then, we all have different words for what that describes. Again, it could be love, it could be devotion, it could be revelation, rapture, it doesn't matter what you call it. And then you understand that the great carrier or the great mover is prana. So if you can use or be conscious of drawing or collecting prana and now offering some of that treasure chest of experiences outward, we can do that into a place, we can do it into an object, we can do it to another person.
Nice.
And that's this idea of prana pratishta. Ishta meaning like our chosen experience, And we're through prana, we're infusing this living energy into a thing, whatever that thing is.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's
I
well
do it
described. Yeah.
great. Now that it's spring, spring is coming. The first year I planted the garden. I have a lovely murti, a kind of beautiful kind of statue of the Divine Mother. It comes from India. She got placed a certain place. I did this mantra. I thought of the treasure. And then lo and behold, the garden, for me being a kind of amateur gardener, just thrived. But the amazing thing was the thing that thrived is this plant known as holy basil or tulsi, which is, interestingly enough, the plant that is said to embody the divine mother. So did this prayer to the divine, and lo and behold, her plant, the plant that represents her, just started flourishing in the space.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you, I went on your website. I saw that you're offering a retreat in Nosara area in Costa Rica. It might be sold out already, but it looks like you go there regularly. And the retreat center looked absolutely beautiful, high, perched up high on the hill. I
Yeah.
can't remember the name of the
Yeah. Blue
retreat center.
spirit. Blue
Blue
spirit.
Spirit. Wow, that looks incredible. And I saw that you're offering combinations of meditation retreats and also Yoga Nidra retreats. So I wanted to ask you, in the realm of Yoga Nidra, can you speak a little bit about why you are teaching that so prevalent now as a practice, as a practice? What is drawing you to Yoga Nidra, and what sort of benefits are you noticing teaching or facilitating Yoga Nidra is having on the community?
Yeah, it's a great question. Listen, one of the gifts of that practice early on, the first teacher I met was Yoga Nidra. Way back when, in 1980, I was being led through these. He was teaching at night. By the way, when I met him, he was 73, and which not too long. I'll eventually get to 73, God willing. But and his voice would lead these journeys. I couldn't even tell what world I was in anymore. Like 10, 15 minutes into these journeys, I was kind of meditating, I was kind of conscious, and then I was somewhere else. He never even called it Yoga Nidra. Later I'd find out it was Yoga Nidra, but he would just lead these journeys. And I kind of just kept those experiences in. I didn't start teaching them until I saw a book that paralleled everything he was teaching. It turned out they had the same teacher, and the teacher was Satchidananda. Actually came kind of the modern take on Yoga Nidra came from Satchidananda, and his main student, one of his students, was a guy named Satyananda Saraswati, and they were co-students, and so they both got it from the master. But in short, I began teaching it like in 96, 97, 98. And at the time, it was kind of Dr. Richard Miller and myself. There was almost no Yoga Nidra being taught in the US. People didn't even know the name, had not even heard of it. Fast forward, I started teaching it. Those days I was creating cassettes so people could listen to it at home and that kind of. You're smiling. I mean, that's how long ago. It wasn't 8 tracks, but it was still a long time ago, dude.
Oh,
It
I
was a
love
long
that.
time.
I love that era. I miss that era. I know.
I know it was a little bit more innocent, right? Um, and then I started running into people who were saying, "Yeah, a friend of mine gave me a reproduction of your cassette, and I've been playing it for my teenager." And to answer your question as to why now and why the emphasis on it is because a couple of reasons. One is that we're all really tired and people don't sleep, and for a lot of different reasons. And I would also make the case that the conditions have become more and more difficult to access. Say, I'm going to use a Sanskrit term, samadhi, but a quietude where we're actually absorbed fully in the moment with no distraction. I would say the conditions are now in place that it's harder and harder to get to samadhi through meditation. Now, in that sense, I feel fortunate because I started meditating in 1980, even before. I mean, that's a long time ago. and life was simpler.
Yeah.
Now with the overstimulation we have, our minds have undergone a lot of changes in the last 10 years. If there's measurable stuff about this, not only just about some mental health challenges, prevalence of anxiety and depression. We also notice that people don't remember as much. We don't remember a lot. And by the way, memory or retentive powers is one of the signs that the ancient tradition said was critical to developing a meditation practice. Memory. Why? Because if I meditate today, but my memory is really feeble, it's very hard for me to call what I experienced yesterday into my present experience in meditation. Now, if you're living a quiet life, it's very easy to access the experience, but most of us are not. So we're not rested. There's a lot of mental health challenges. Getting still is harder for us. And meditation, as opposed to Yoga Nidra, the way we get still is through concentration, which is, again, super challenging for people in this day and age.
True.
The way into getting quiet through Yoga Nidra is sleep. Moreover, deep effortlessness or relaxation. So you're systematically letting go in order to get into the experience of absorption or stillness. In meditation, to get to that same experience, you're concentrating. You're trying to do it gently, but you're still concentrating on your breath or a mantra or a chakra or a feeling or a word. You're still concentrating. In Yoga Nidra, it's really the gateway of approaching the edge of deep sleep. So rather than concentrating on something, you're letting go of everything. You're at the edge of sleep, yet maintaining awareness. And so it really speaks to, one, the physiological need we have for more rest in this day and age. And two, making the state of absorption in our own essence more accessible.
Mm. Very cool.
And it's not like I say, okay, everyone just give up trying to meditate. Your chances are done. I combination of both, because it's relaxing. We venture there through letting go, through meditation. We venture there through learning to connect and pay attention. And but the other thing I just want to mention in passing, just the last part of the answer to your question, and that is, there's a lot of Yoga Nidra being done now. Not only is it not just Dr. Miller and I, but there's so much accessible Yoga Nidra. But there's now a lot of confusion about it because we've actually done kind of this reductionist take on it, where it's okay if you fall asleep, it's no big deal. It's basically relaxation. It's basically sleep plus yoga kind of thing. And that's not really it. So some of the actual technology and the ancient wisdom about Yoga Nidra is actually a practice that's more than 1,000 years old. I really think it's important that people who practice it, but certainly people who teach it, understand what it is and understand what it isn't. So that's why I've emphasized not just making the practice more accessible on my app and things like that. And really in every event I do, I practically teach Yoga Nidra because I just think it helps people be more attentive to what's going on in the workshop, but also making an effort to make sure the teachers have an understanding of really what Yoga Nidra is meant to be or can be versus, what it isn't and kind of what it's been reduced to. So, yeah.
Interesting. Have you ever had a psychotherapy session where someone has practiced hypnotherapy on you?
I actually have gone years and years ago. I did try hypnosis. I think 2 or 3 different times. Yeah, I did.
Would you make a distinction or comparison between Yoga Nidra and hypnosis?
Yeah, there's a couple. Okay, so there's some similarity, and then there's some important distinctions. The main one is this, and that is that in hypnosis, there's an element of unconsciousness in as much as someone is guiding you through it, and someone may be making suggestions into your unconscious that you are not completely aware of as they're happening.
Mm.
And I don't know if it's still going on, but there used to be these kind of hypnosis acts where they were kind of they were basically entertainment, where a hypnotherapist would get studio audience, to come up, and he would hypnotize 5 or 6 people, and he'd have the man act like a woman and the woman act like a man, or whatever it was. That's the epitome of being unconscious. So someone is giving you a suggestion, and your subconscious is now taking you along the lines of that suggestion. And the whole notion of yoga nidra is that you're super conscious. There's not that opportunity for that. The overlap is deep relaxation is the way in. And by making the conscious mind more quiet, your subconscious is more available or accessible. And again, typically in Yoga Nidra, it's about expanding the subconscious so that we're now beginning to interact with the part of us that we're not aware of, which is part of us that's whole and complete. We could even say eternal.
Very cool.
Mm,
I noticed when I read it's Satyananda's book, right? That he does a wonderful Yoga Nidra book.
yeah,
And I noticed that he will weave in these, he'll use religious iconography from different religious traditions.
right.
And when I have utilized his Yoga Nidra in our studio and I started reading them, I guess sometimes currently I have this feeling of like I want to keep secular in the sense of I don't want to infringe upon anyone's specific religious beliefs. And so I've tended to change that part. What are your thoughts on the value of in that super conscious state of yoga nidra? Do you weave in things that you know might be challenging for people to visualize if it goes against their
Yeah, it's really fine. It's a really great question.
I'm just curious how
So,
you create that.
no, so um, we can think of the iconography, and that's the right word for it, in 2 ways. One is the religious association. So a cross has a very powerful religious association. A six-pointed star has also a powerful religious association for most people. He's presenting them less in that context and more as archetype or even sacred geometry.
Hmm,
So what came first, the cross or Christianity?
good point.
The
Ooh,
cross came first.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. You're
What
right.
came first, Jewish Judaism or two triangles that overlap in that way? And it's actually that, those are actually yantra based ideas. Now, the challenge is that what I'm saying is essentially true, but if people's association to those icons, if you will, is religious, it may actually pull them out of any possibility of relaxing,
Yeah,
whether they're pro a particular one or had, let's say they grew up with, Christian background, and yet it left them a scar, and now it actually will disturb their relaxation.
yeah,
I mean, so it's perfectly fine to let them go and not include them. They're not absolutely necessary. Also, Swami Satyananda Saraswati, the book, it's not that it's dated, but he was teaching to a very specific audience, and they captured that. It wasn't like he had any way of knowing the extent to which Yoga Nidra would be shared 4 or 5 decades later, that it would come to the West to the degree it has.
yes,
But you know what, Todd, it might be helpful just to take a second and just explain a little bit about these distinctions, because one of the things that his approach to Yoga Nidra, again, there's a lot of confusion about the idea that some people even think that he created Yoga Nidra, that Swami Satyananda created it. He did write a book, and that book did come to the West in about the 80s, late 90s, late 80s, early 90s. But But Yoga Nidra, again, existed. It's in Buddhist texts, it's in Tantric texts, it's even the Mahabharata, which is 5 centuries before Christ. All of these mentions of Yoga Nidra go way back, hundreds and hundreds of years, long before he ever wrote about it. And the one thing that's described again and again is more about the state, not about a particular methodology. A lot of styles have borrowed from his template. A lot of the way the Yoga Nidra is practiced today is that template. But one of the things that's maybe helpful for a lot of people who are practicing Yoga Nidra or teaching it, want to understand a little bit of the subtlety in it. There's actually 4 stages of the experience of Yoga Nidra. So the first one is the way the classes, Yoga Nidra sessions begin, which is either awareness of your breath or beginning to physically relax, to relax the body in different cueing, different areas to soften. Super beneficial for all of us because it's shifting us from sympathetic to parasympathetic. Our minds are starting to internalize. Our sensory perception is beginning to become more quiet. It's less exteroception, which is awareness of our environment, to interoception, which is what's happening inside. Aware of subtle imbalances in our breath, for example, or tightness in muscles. So that's stage 1. Super helpful for all of us. We need it, especially in our lifestyle today, right? The second one is this level of ideation where we become more able to objectify our mind, where now my mind isn't something that's just all consuming, or I'm subsumed in my identity and my moods, my feelings, my thoughts. But now I begin to have this level of relaxation where my mental activity and mental, let's say, my identity, I get some distance from it and I view it. It's in that place that these practices where you visualize or you bring things into your conscious awareness, like a cross, like a skull, like a temple, like the sunset, like a mountaintop, like a cloud. We all have associations to all of those things, even if we haven't, spent a lot of time in a church. That if I see or feel a cross, I still have a response. The idea in that stage of Yoga Nidra is that we're objectifying our reaction.
That makes sense.
We're actually putting that into the mix to generate the mind's movement, and at the same time, divorce ourselves from what it's experiencing.
Ooh, that's cool.
So that's really the level of objectification. So you're creating ideas, but you're watching how your mind plays out. What's going on in this methodology of it's called Kasha, where you're just letting the screen of the mind, almost like you're watching cartoons, watching a movie. It's just coming up on the screen. Put a cross on there. What do you see? I see the cross, and then whatever. And then there's also sensations that we throw in, all that. That's the second stage of Yoga Nidra. Now, the third stage, things change. Third stage is called Abhava Pratyaya. Bhava means feeling or concept, and Abhava means without feelings, without concepts. And Pratyaya just means absorbed. So now imagine that state right as you're about to fall asleep. It's almost like all your concepts are just about slipping away, like you're just about to drift off, and all of your ideas and concepts are just like dissolving. And now you're in this, right before you nod off, now you're just in this place of nothingness. That's the third stage of Yoga Nidra. You're right at the edge between sleep and awareness. And in that stage, all your ideas, all your associations, and they are our associations. How I feel about a cross, how I feel about a skull, how I feel. Now it's all slipped away. And now we're all resting more or less in that same no-thing place. That actually is the beginning, officially, of Yoga Nidra. Oh. What I was taught is the first 2 I described is the preparation. And that's why we use those objects to get distance from our mind. But then ultimately, the idea is to dissolve the mind. That's the third stage. And in that third stage, sorry to have a long answer, you're
No, I
relatively.
love this. I love hearing about the mechanics of the
Oh,
structure.
right on.
Yeah.
So this third stage, then again, I said is like the experience of no concepts, you know?
Yeah.
So what's the fourth stage? Well, the experience of no concepts is still a concept. Even emptiness is a concept. And the fourth stage is when even the concept of emptiness or the concept of, or the experience of no concepts dissolves. And that fourth stage is just grace. That's truly the full flowering of Yoga Nidra. So if at the time you're thinking you're in Yoga Nidra, you're not,
Got
because
it.
that would have been a concept.
Mhm.
And so that's what I learned. And to be honest with you, I was schooled, as I said, my teacher was schooled by the same teacher as Swami excuse me, Saraswati, Satyananda Saraswati. And it was really a very busy journey. And then I learned this other system, which seemed really much more to parallel what the ancient texts talked about, which is that it is the lightest state of sleep while simultaneously aware of one's own essence. It's like the intersection of sleep and meditation. You can't be visualizing things and be there. You can use visualization of things to move there, but it's not the same thing.
Mm.
So this other approach I also learned, which I lean into more in my teaching, is more spacious. There's less conjuring of imagery and those other elements.
Oh man, I want to come to Costa Rica
Dude,
and
let's
just
do.
bliss out in some yoga nidra. That
Yeah,
sounds
okay. Well, if
amazing.
you're not coming in May, come in December, Todd. We should do it.
December, that would be incredible. Oh
Yeah,
man, I know it's so beautiful there.
yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you for taking the time to detail that because understanding that structure makes so much more sense to me. That makes a lot of sense.
I'm thrilled to hear you say that. Thrilled. Yeah, it's
I mean,
worth
I,
it then.
I know some people have this, and I think in his book he mentions that there was a student that was extremely restless, but when the child was falling asleep, they would either play a language or something of that nature that in that yoga nidra state, the potential for learning is so
Mm-hmm.
vast that languages could be learned. But it sounds interesting because in that level of where you're saying like uh, when you have cogitation that there's emptiness, but you're still thinking. But if there's a state where you're not thinking, how what a sponge you would be. So I guess if we wanted to learn something else, we'd have to have the coordination to have the teacher put that.
Turn on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
tape, on the
But
thing, do
beyond
the chant, read the book. Right.
yeah. But beyond that, that's amazing. Do if you were to tell me a text I could read, a tantric text that I know you maybe want to ask me more questions to find out, well, what have I read or what am I interested in? But is there a go-to text you recommend students to pick up and read that has been really profound for you in your journey?
Well, there's certainly been quite a few, and it really we used to do this on the website where we had a suggested reading list, and it kind of went from beginning to advance. It should still be there. I think it's still there.
Okay, I'll check it out.
So, like for instance, in Ayurveda and Tantra and yoga, because those are really the three streams of ancient knowledge that come in to play in the yoga that I've taught and that I have teachers really get schooled in yoga, Tantra, and Ayurveda. So the foundational text for that, wow.
I know there's so
Uh,
many, so it'd be hard. I guess any random one that pops to mind that you think, check this one out. I love reading, and I like even if it's a. I find that like, the tantric texts, well, I guess like the
mhm.
Tibetan Buddhist, some of those texts they're pretty intense. Like the They're
That's my challenge. That's the
and they're
challenge. The
dense.
texts are
Yeah.
really dense, but they're also, Todd, they're not, that's not accidental. They're actually written in a dense way because they wanted to, in a way, preserve the knowledge so that the assumption was they would write in what was called the twilight language, which is like remember, I think in driver's ed, they used to say the most dangerous time of day to drive is that transition into sunset, because not everything you see seems real, or you don't see everything you think you do. And that's the way they were written. They're written in a kind of nondescript way that initiates would understand, like in the Tantric, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, for instance, which is kind of the manual of Tantric Hatha Yoga. There's things about like cows eating their tongue and stuff like that. So that's purely symbolic. That's nothing literal that anyone would understand unless they understood what's the meaning of cow, what's the tongue thing, and what's the moon thing in that reference. Therefore, sometimes storytelling is a better way to learn. A book that's positively impacted a lot of yoga practitioners was Autobiography of a Yogi, for example. And
Yes.
that's just, did you have a chance to read that book?
I did. Yeah, I love that one.
Lighting up on the notion of it. Yeah, me too. I was just telling someone about it just recently. Um, there's a book called At the 11th Hour.
Ooh.
That's almost and it is by a man I studied with in great depth. He's one of my teachers, and it's called At the 11th Hour, and that's the story of his teacher, who was a tantric master. At the 11th Hour by his
So much.
name is Tugunaya, and that's like Autobiography of a Yogi 75 years later, where
Ah,
you could speak to present audiences, and it's like on the one hand quite fantastical, like what tantra kind of the implications of what dedicated tantric practice can do, but it's also weaving a lot of knowledge as opposed to like a text which is super dense and kind of waiting for a teacher to explain it, kind of thing.
got it. Got it.
So
Very
that's
cool.
story teaching, all cool.
I'm so glad you, yeah, I'm gonna get that right away and just start it. I was just wanting to
Oh, you'll enjoy it.
just
You'll
throw me
enjoy it.
something. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
you'll
have,
enjoy it for sure.
you wrote a book called The Four Desires.
Okay.
Oh, we don't have a whole lot of time left. Four Desires for Dummies. And I
We
know
did
you
pretty
I
good last time.
yeah, you did a great job with the Tantra explained and like the basic minimal, like this is what you need to know if you want to try to you start stepping in. And then I saw you offer online ways that we can join with you and you can coach us along with the
Yeah,
the four
absolutely. So
desires.
I can do four desires for dummies, or just a quick version of it. In short, let me just start by saying, when it was time, when I felt dedicated to write a book, and by then I'd already been teaching for almost 20 years or so. A publisher asked me, why are you writing a book like this when just doesn't have any yoga poses in it? And I said, precisely because there's not enough information that bridges the practice of yoga with the practice of living yoga. And that's what this book is. So in short, it's based on this Vedic principle. It's again about 3,000 years old, called the Purushartha. Purusha means soul. Artha means for the purpose of soul. And so their teaching is that you have four desires, and desire actually is meant when it's in alignment with your higher good and with that inner teacher. You have desires and they are supported. The Buddha said we have righteous desire and not righteous desire. Didn't say avoid all desire, just said stick with the righteous desire as much as you can, right? And so those four desires briefly are dharma, which is purpose, meaning, there's a seed of wanting to be the fullest version of yourself in each of us. In fact, everything in nature has it, from tiger cub to an acorn, wants to be an oak tree, wants to be a grown-up tiger, whatever it is. We all have that seed. So the desire to be the fullest version of yourself and be part of and serve the greater whole of which you are a part. That's number one. That's kind of the preeminent one, at least in the beginning. The second desire is to have the means to do that. So that's physical health, financial wherewithal, maybe a home, certainly have enough to eat. And doesn't mean you have to be a billionaire, but it does mean you need the basic needs. You have to meet those needs in order to fulfill your purpose. The third desire is for kama, which some measure of pleasure. And again, that doesn't have to be outrageous. Partially, it's the pleasure of achieving things you want to achieve. It's also having some friendships. It's maybe seeing some beauty, some art, gardening, dance, waves breaking, walking on the beach, having a few laughs in your life. All of us want that. That's actually a motivating factor for us that invigorates our soul's purpose. And the fourth desire is for freedom. And it's not, there's this one version of this idea that says like, jiva mukti, which is you want to let go of your body. And I would argue that's not what the ancients suggested. The ancients suggested you want to have those three other desires, but you don't want the burden of chasing them. You don't want burdens in the process of more joy, fulfilling your purpose, and having the means to fulfill your purpose. You want freedom, and you want to, what did Christ say? He said, my burden is easy, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Mm. And it's so this idea, that's all we want. Can I have pleasure, purpose, and the means to fulfill my purpose, and yet not be so burdened by the world? We want those four desires. So that was the seed of the book. Ultimately, though, it really requires some reflection to understand what is our life's purpose. It's not a matter of like picking someone else's purpose. The Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, which summarizes all of these teachings so beautifully, says basically it's better to do your purpose badly than someone else's well. And that each of us were born kind of like our own unique instrument. And there's this symphony called creation. And we're meant to play our instrument as well as we can in order to bring more glory to creation. And that's what the process is about. And I started teaching it about 25 years ago. Wow. And after about 10 years, wrote the book about it. And it's about identifying and naming your life purpose, identifying and naming when you're not living for your purpose, what are you living for that's taking you away from your purpose? Because we're being moved one way or another, either in the direction of fulfilling our purpose or in the direction that's not consistent with our purpose. But it's important that we name it. What's that default mechanism we go to? And then understanding how to use the resources of our mind, our body, our breath to manifest the things that will help us achieve our purpose. So it's very much about organizing around key contemplative ideas. I give people exercises. I created a workbook companion to the book. And I would offer that at the end of it, people say, wow, I wasn't expecting this. We didn't do any yoga poses. This is as much yoga as anything I've ever done.
Yeah. That sounds amazing. And I got to be very honest, I did not have a chance to read it before today, and I'm definitely going to read it. And I'm curious if you would be open in the future to, after I read it and I reflect, having coming back with a few more questions for you on that
Absolutely.
text. That
I
would be
think the best way to serve your audience, Todd, would be is come do it. Because I think in about a month's time, I'm actually going to offer it online again and walk people through it.
wonderful.
Then you could really serve.
I'm in. I'm in.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
Rod,
Yeah.
what an incredible opportunity. I mean, you've exceeded my hopes and expectations. It's my
Awesome.
first time to get a chance to meet and speak and hear you. To be really honest, I haven't had a chance to hear you speak, and so I I love your calm, thoughtful responses, and it's just been such a pleasure. I'm so thankful. Thank you, listeners, for supporting us and tuning in. And I'm is there anything, Rod, that you would like to leave us with? You've given us plenty to digest and implement in our own life. And but I'm curious, is there anything that comes to mind that you'd like to leave us with in terms of like a little extra inspiration or
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
coaching.
Well, first, thank you. Listen, thanks for your openness and your
Oh,
curiosity and the opportunity to talk about these things.
thank you.
Joy to share these because I do think they make a huge impact in people's lives. They certainly have in mine, and I can sense
Absolutely.
that they have in you as well.
Thank you.
Remind people that we're never done learning. We're never done learning. The last thing I would just offer is, we some years ago someone asked, listen, if you could just do kind of a haiku, like something really short that would help people, and that kind of distills your teaching down. And say, I think it was um, I think what I came up with was, and I think it's probably as applicable now as it was almost 10 years ago. Stop your noise, get still, find love, share love. And I think that's it. We all have a wellspring of love and compassion within our hearts, as well as wisdom. But when we're stirred by the noise, our own internal noise as much as the external noise, it's hard to find it. And that I really believe that love and that compassion and that understanding, kind of embracing each other's humanity, is really what the summit of these teachings lead us back to. And so I would just offer, that's up to each of us, is to turn to practice. We quiet our noise down, we get still, we remember love, and we share
Incredible. Well
it. Yeah.
done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done,
Yeah.
Rod. Oh man. You made
All
my
right.
I'm already like I gotta go drive and pick up my daughter and I'm like I'm gonna relax now. Like I was already before I got on the conversation, I was like,
Fine.
my wife called me and said, you got like this amount of time to hurry up when you're done. You got to get to school, you got to pick her up. And I'm like, dude, I'm stressing. I'm stressing. Like I'm gonna do my
You float
podcast
down it, brother.
and I'm gonna hop in
Remember
the
love. Remember
and
love, give love.
I'm thinking I can't wait to just get in my car and cruise and chill and not stress out.
Right on.
So
Good.
thank you
All
so
right.
much. I
Mission
really
accomplished.
enjoyed this. You're a great teacher, a great speaker, and
Thank
I can't wait to. I mean, it's good to be on Zoom, but I do really value the teacher student in the same room is
you.
such an incredible experience. So I started even before today, I was thinking, I have this feeling I'm gonna want to go practice with Rod after this. When I checked out your
All
website,
right.
so I can't wait. Thank you,
All
Rod.
right, Ted. Well, thanks for your
Um,
grace.
thank
Thanks
you
a
so
lot.
much. All right,
All
thanks.
right. Peace, brother.
Thank you.